Hi, and warm welcome to today's project level up session within the European Cityverses Uniting for Inclusiveness project. My name is Monica Ek, and I work here at Lindström Science Park as a project manager, and I'm co-lead for this project. And our project has a long name, but we really think it's good because our name tells our story. European is our where. It signifies where we operate. And Cityverses is our what. It defines what we are building. And Uniting is our how. It describes how we work using universal design to create a human-centric solution. And Inclusiveness is our why. We want to set new accessibility standards across Europe. And this project has 4 main objectives. The first one is to design an inclusive local digital twin for Gothenburg. And the second one is to enhance this digital twin with AI, so it becomes a practical and accessible service. And the third one is to communicate and share our model so other European cities can follow. The fourth one is to develop a sustainable business model so the result can live on and scale across Europe. So welcome to one of our project level up sessions. We are holding these key training sessions to boost everyone's knowledge, both within and outside the project. We want to share our insights and also to ensure that we comply with the necessary EU rules and technical standards. And today it's our 8th session, and you can find the earlier ones at our website. We record these sessions, and we will also record this one. So today's focus is the session, the keys to a human-centric universal design. But before I present today's speakers, I will recommend the next session on the 9th December for the presentation regarding local digital twin toolbox. So save the date for that one. But now, please let me introduce Jenny Lindström Beijer from our normal and Emilia Wennberg from Kokokaka. So Jenny will present how the project works with universal design in practice, and Emilia will demonstrate how user insights are transformed into user experiences. So you are welcome to add your questions in the chat at any time, and we will have a Q&A part after your presentations. Yeah. So welcome, and over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. And the clicker. Thank you. So, hi everyone. Nice to be here and have the opportunity to speak about our favorite topic, universal design and inclusive human research. So today's session will be about the following parts. The first, we will talk about universal design and give an introduction to that, and then share some insights from our inclusive user research that we have conducted. And then we will talk about design and feedback in our iterative loops that we are working with. So it will be a bit of repetition for you who've been part of our internal webinars, but there will be some new things also, so stay along for that. But just first, a few words about who we are. I'm Jenny Lindström Beijer, the founder of our normal association, and we are a non-profit organization working for inclusion for families of children with disabilities.
Yeah. And I'm Emilia. I'm a UX designer and at Kokokaka, and in this project I do UX design as well as some accessibility design.
Yeah. So we work in parallel work packages. You work also in work package 2 and 4 as well in this project. But we from our normal association are in charge of work package number 2, which has the project objectives on conducting user research to support development of an inclusive and user-friendly digital twin experience of Gothenburg's urban environment. And how we do this is that we have divided the process into a few phases where we work with gathering data and insights, mainly from empathy research, so working very dedicatedly with some persons in our target group to really follow what are their feelings, what are they thinking, what are they doing, etc. And I will share some quotes from that research. And then we take it into analysis and idea generation. So we worked in workshops and iterate an ideation process. And now we are in this line where we're coming also to prioritization. So we're starting to see what do we think should be like the core functionality. Now we share some thoughts about that. And then we're in the middle of this iterative process where we will design things to test and then go back and forward. So that's why we're here together also presenting this today. And then of course the next phase will be also going into implementation of this. So just a few words about universal design and how it supports inclusive innovation processes. First, as I said, we are from a non-profit organization. So what we do is that we work with raising the voices from our target group, as we say. It is children with different experiences of diagnosis or disabilities, but also the siblings and parents. So we work with the whole family perspective on inclusion, and we work with design methods. And we contribute with this knowledge and the network that we have to this project. When it comes to universal design, we work with the definition from the Convention of Rights for Persons with Disabilities, the UN Convention, which is that universal design means the design of products, environments, programs, and services to be usable by all people to the greatest extent possible without the need for adaptation or specialized design. So it is about not looking for special adaptations or solutions that could potentially stigmatize persons or feeling that it's an additional way of using a core service. We want to see how can this be developed in the really core of new services, products, or environments. However, universal design shall not exclude assistive devices for particular groups of persons with disabilities where this is needed. And this is just as important. When it's not possible, perhaps, to have some kind of assistive technology or device into the core solution, it shouldn't be neglected. It should be offered as an alternative way and a flexibility to use the service. And we use this little drawing, the picture, to explain what this is all about. It's about walking the extra mile, as we said. We shouldn't go for the left one. This is how the society has been designed traditionally, excluding several different groups of persons. And then the last couple of decades, society moved towards working more with adaptations and separatistic solutions for different needs. But we want to see how can we walk the extra mile and see, can we find solutions aligned more with the right one, saying how can we find a solution that is equal for all. And just giving some examples about how is this aligned then with inclusive innovation. So for example, this is a boat, a Norwegian boat, called Vision of the Fjords, where they've just worked with design in another way, basically giving space for more persons with a wheelchair, or if you have a stroller, or just giving more people spaces to have good views from the ferry. That's one way of seeing how this could come into a new type of solution. Another one that we know is well known today is electric toothbrush. It was initially developed for a person with motoric physical challenges for brushing their teeth, but we know today it's part of the standard solutions for many persons. They appreciate this. And there are so many examples of how we can work with inclusive innovation when you start listening to those more perhaps edge cases of needs and then seeing how it can also contribute to solutions for the many. Last example here today is just how we work with subtitles. That was something that was provided more for a more narrow crowd, but now we know it's part of the standard solutions. Many appreciate it also if you want to take part of a content without having the sound on for several reasons. So this goes with the saying, solve for one, extend to the many. And this is the method that we are trying, and this is how we're working in this project as well. So what we do is sometimes called designing from the edges. And I like to quote this saying also, if we understand what the extremes are, the middle will take care of itself. And we are really trying to listen deeply into voices of persons who are experiencing exclusion in society today and in city and event experiences. And then how can we use this for designing for the many also. So that was just a very few words about universal design and the method. And please reach out if you're interested in learning more or discussing it, because we really like this topic. So sharing some insights from the user research that we have conducted in this project so far. We have worked with several different research methods and in parallel also. So we have worked with analyzing existing survey results that we had from families visiting different family sites. We have worked with the literature research, particularly on inclusive tourism and accessibility in smart cities. We have worked with empathy research. So as I said, really worked with deep interviews with the family panel. And I will come back to a description of that panel soon. And we have also worked with trigger materials. So having respondents react to different types of material and examples. We have done visitor journey mapping on event sites in the city. And we are now in the middle of working in parallel, actually, both with lo-fi and hi-fi prototype testing. So this is something that we do together with our prime target group, family and youth, family of children and youth with disabilities. But we also are in the middle of working with the broader public also on user testing.
Yep, and I will touch on that a bit later.
Yeah.
As well. Yeah.
So that's what we have been up to. And as I said, we've had the user panel, a family panel that we work more dedicatedly with. They have been families of different sizes and children in different ages, but of particular interest also with different experiences then of different types of diagnoses and or disabilities. And I will share a few quotes now from this user research that we have done. So those quotes are based on interviews that we did with this family panel. So we asked them about how do you experience inclusion or exclusion in relation to the city and event experiences today? What type of tech and digital services do you use when experiencing city or preparing for a city or event visit? And they also reacted to many different types of examples of maps, websites, services, and also niche accessibility apps, etc. I will not share so much of the findings from those tests because we don't have the time today, unfortunately. But I will just share a few quotes so you get the understanding of what do these families actually experience. Yeah, so a few examples of barriers that families experience then when visiting cities and events today. So we had, for example, several actually mentioning people's prejudice. that you can't, a quote here saying, you can't see our daughter's diagnosis. So we often get stares and comments from others. We also heard mentioning of in urban environments, there are so many steps and curbs. Simple physical barriers are extremely common, even in newly built areas. With a 4-year-old in one hand, a wheelchair in the other, that curb becomes a really big deal. So what could potentially be seen as a small barrier has a very big impact. Especially when you go together, you're not alone doing things. You do it as in this example, a family of several persons together. Also, basic needs are often overlooked. Access to toilets and changing facilities is a huge challenge for us. It's difficult to spend extended time in the city because there is no way to change on our daughter. They have a need for a bigger service room, and it's not provided today, unfortunately, in so many places at all. Activities without any order or structure don't work for us. For example, midsummer celebration, so typical Swedish thing. It's just a bunch of activities all scattered around. This is someone talking about the need of having a purpose and a process when you go somewhere, that it can't be just things in general being offered, because then it becomes a barrier for them to visit this place. Also, we've heard several talking about the need to control, avoid, prepare for crowds and sudden sounds and visuals. The biggest challenge for us is large crowds. Moving around in urban environments or shopping centers is almost unthinkable. And another one saying, when we walk around, we as parents give her, their daughter, a heads up when unexpected sounds are coming. If we can warn her in advance, she won't panic when they happen. And last, I also brought this quote of, if something seems more amazing than it actually is, that doesn't work. Like the amusement park, Liseberg. When trying a new ride, we absolutely don't want to end up in a situation where she, our daughter, then regrets it in the middle of the ride. That could lead to panic, self-harming behavior, or even trying to climb out. And this is when what's offered today is really marketing material from many websites, and then things can seem very, very tempting, but it's not what it's like in real life. So those were examples of barriers, and from the research that we did, we grouped them into categories, and those are the 4 categories that we can see are barriers that families experience today. So physical barriers, attitudinal barriers, sensory stimuli, and inaccessible information. And you can read more about this in our report, deliverable 2.1, or you can reach out afterwards and you can get a copy of that report. So moving on then, did we see any possibilities? What can be done with the potential new technology that we have here at hand? Here I will share some quotes also. So for example, plan a route beforehand. If I can check where the elevator is beforehand, I gladly do. Sometimes they are so hidden, then all the energy goes into getting around. Or practice or rehearse a visit beforehand. Quote saying theater, musicals, and similar events, when we've gone through the routine multiple times, entering, waiting, sitting down, we have practiced. That makes it easier at a new place because she knows what to expect. So those are all quotes from parents. I should say also saying. Another possibility is about personalized information. Our son doesn't like surprises. So we study all the information beforehand. When the doors open, how many people will there be, how long the wait is, where the entrances and exits are, when they go on stage, when they leave. He wants to know all of that. Information that typically isn't provided on a web page today. And also we have quotes talking about discovering independently. Being able to discover on her own would be something for her. She has the curiosity to explore. Right now, she's limited and only sees the world we present to her. So this is a teenager with physical impairment and having difficulties in moving around freely as she would like to explore new areas. So when we combined the input we had and we looked at the possibilities, we could see that there is really something here around before. They're also during and after, but it's really about the planning and preparing the experience that we could see that maybe we should concentrate our use stories and use cases around this particular phase. And we did so with selecting then a few user stories to pinpoint in our work. So this is just to show you how we grouped the insights we had from our research into pain points, but also potential gains. And we have written about those in our report that I just mentioned. And we have now 2 reports from our work package talking about our insights. So you can have a copy of those. Just reach out, or they're available from the project. But also we took those and we looked into what could be potential opportunity areas. So we had those 4 open opportunity areas: interactive experience, simulation possibilities, individualization, and engagement. And we also had an open theme that we used as a base for our ideation process when we tried to see what type of solutions should we look into then in this project. And we selected a set of user stories where we focused on 4 edge cases. So we have a family with a child using a wheelchair, where they are in need of accessible route planning for the destination from an exterior to an interior environment. We also have a family with a child with a cognitive disability, with the need of selecting time and places with less crowding and noise when they go somewhere. We have a family with a youth with intellectual disability, with the need of accessing a virtual or visual version of a new place in order to familiarize oneself with the environment beforehand. And we have a 4th user story about an adult being with a youth with a social anxiety and the need of accessing a structured and visualized step-by-step schedule for visiting an event or making experience more manageable. And then this is very small text, I know, on this slide, so it's from our documentation in the report as well. But this is how we look into, okay, those are our edge cases, but this is also relevant for many more. And we started to list what are other potential target groups that could have similar needs, and we could see that there are actually many. So I just wanted to show that with this mission. And I think this is my last slide. I will hand over to you, talking a bit about the core functionalities then to test. So based on those user stories, we also pinpointed a set of core functionality that we think should be present in the coming solution that we're looking into. And those are then navigating with wayfinding, navigating independently, have a rendered pre-tour guide, having something that you could look into before going somewhere, like videos and having some kind of planning support. And you will show a bit more about like how does this look, what could be a potential solution. And so we are actually, if you are familiar with working with Double Diamond, and when it comes to development of new services and products, we are really in the middle right now. We have come to like doing the wider exploring of user needs, and now we are converging into like, okay, what should we really prioritize for our digital twin solution? So
thank you, Jenny.
Yes, over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, so my work has built a lot on the interviews that you, Jenny, have done, and also the overall work of the team in Work Package 2, primarily the user journeys, as well as primarily the user journeys and the opportunity areas is what we've taken with us when we've been doing our work. But I wanted to touch quickly on accessibility and design, since that is quite central in everything that we do. And we wanted to take that in consideration from the beginning instead of adding it on at the end. So my role as a UX designer is quite wide. I do a lot of things. So I do research and I design wireframes and I do a whole lot of things, but I also need to keep accessibility in mind. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about UX and accessibility and where they connect. So this graphic from the Interaction Design Foundation, I think explains quite well how accessibility and UX sort of interlink, or that UX is at the intersection between usability and accessibility. And what I mean by that is that many accessibility barriers can be lowered through good UX design. So things like clear headings, a clear site structure, having visual cues on which elements are interactive or not, use of iconography, things like that can be really useful for people with cognitive disabilities or people who have difficulty reading. And if we look at it from the other direction, the usability also can drastically increase through good accessibility. So a website that, for example, is designed with keyboard navigation in mind, for example, if you're using a screen reader, those are usually designed in such a way that they're also logical and easy to follow for other people as well. So it is a bit linked to what Jenny talks about with universal design, that if we solve for one group of people, it can oftentimes extend to the many. So that is a key responsibility of mine, and it's something that I find quite engaging as well, since it's an opportunity to truly innovate based on people's needs. So I wanted to give a couple of inspiration examples from the gaming scene, since a digital twin, and especially the one that we're working on, is quite a detailed 3D environment. I wanted to get some inspiration from the gaming scene that already have interactive 3D environments, and how can we take these findings with us when we create this digital twin world. So the first example here is an example of The Last of Us Part 2, which helped popularize something called high contrast mode. So what that does is that it simplifies the detailed 3D environment if you have this setting turned on, and it makes all the backgrounds usually gray with key interactive elements, whether that is friendly characters, enemies, or interactive items, are highlighted in bright primary colors, so you can easily identify them if you have low vision. My next example is from, well, I've picked Overwatch here, but lots of different PC games these days have what's called remappable controls. And that's usually or originally intended for people with motor disabilities, so they can interact with a piece of software in whichever way they choose. But it's one of those things that is extended to the many, and I rebind controls all the time when I play games because I'm so used to things behaving a certain way. So it also helps lower those cognitive barriers as well. You can just engage in whichever way that you are used to. The other examples here is from Uncharted. I'm going to breeze over these quite quickly, but they have something called camera assist, which allows users to only need one joystick to play the game. Usually you have two, one that controls your camera and one that controls your character. But by using camera assist, the camera follows the in-game character. So that also helps people who might want to play the game with only one hand or have any other sort of motor needs. My last example is a cognitive accessibility example, and that's from Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown, and they have something called memory shards. So you can, usually in games that have a map, you can pin locations for later, but what they do is they took it one step further. So when you pin a location on the map, it also saves a screenshot of that location and what it looks like. And that helps people remember, maybe there's a puzzle that I wanted to see for later, or maybe there's a location that's involved in a quest. You know exactly what it is you've saved by looking at it on the map. So with this inspiration, and I took this inspiration with me when I designed. Not everything necessarily might be relevant for this, but I wanted to just highlight things that inspire me, and hopefully I can inspire some of you as well. But now I wanted to touch on the design and feedback itself, and touch on the things that we primarily explored now when we have created our wireframes, but also when we've tested them with our test panel. So the three things we touched on was the digital twin. That's quite central to the experience that we're doing. We also touched on the simulation possibilities that are truly unique when it comes to a virtual environment. We can simulate lots of different scenarios. And then also the interactive map. So finding information and taking that with you when you plan. So what did we do well? What did people like? The main thing that people really liked was the digital environment itself and the sense of freedom and exploration. Users had an easy time picking up on the control scheme, the initial control scheme that we have, which is touchscreen and mouse based. So you tap and drag to look around, and then you tap on the ground to move around. That was quite easy, especially for kids to pick up. But of course, we're looking into more ways of interacting with the environment as well. Another thing that was highly appreciated was being able to see different representations of people moving around, seeing the environment looking quite lifelike was very appreciated. They also would like to be able to turn that off as well for focusing strictly on the environment, but it was something that always was appreciated, and they would like to see even more of that and even more ways of interacting with that. Another thing that participants really liked was that simulation possibility of being able to see the arena change with the different event types. The next thing that people liked was the map filters. So being able to choose which information that you were interested in, especially things like sensory filters were interesting. Not only does it help reduce the visual clutter and only keeping the relevant information on the screen, but it also helped them tie the locations on the map to locations in the digital twin itself, which made it a lot easier to communicate this information with your child, because you have a physical location that you can refer to instead of just a location on a map. So what could we do better? The design itself is quite text heavy, or the one that we tested was quite text heavy. So we've looked into incorporating things like iconography and rewriting things to be a bit more simplified. This particularly proved a barrier for younger children, as well as people who are lower literacy. So we wanted to take that feedback with us and incorporate it. Another thing was tied to the design itself. We got feedback that it looked quite simple, and especially from children, they found it quite boring. Some mentioned it feeling a bit clinical looking or clinical feeling a bit more like an accessibility app instead of something fun and high tech. So that's something that we're exploring now, ways to make it more fun and immersive to interact with. And the last thing also touches on immersion, which is sound. That not only makes the experience itself more immersive when you're exploring, but it also helps you prepare. Like Jenny mentioned, for example, sudden noises. If you know what types of noises to expect, it helps reduce that anxiety when you actually visit later on. So what are our next steps? We are currently exploring different graphical profiles. So what I mentioned with things like color palettes, iconography, things like that. We're also looking into live data implementation and different ways that different types of data that can be displayed and different ways to interact with that data is something that we're exploring, especially on a larger scale with multiple venues instead of just our test arena. And then the last thing that we're working on, or the last thing, a pretty big thing we're working on, is the interactive prototype. And we're also iteratively testing that as well. So not only the clickable prototype, but all the sketches that we've had so far, we're testing that on our user panel, and we're hoping to diversify that panel further as well to help identify even more barriers. So I think that was everything for me.
So thank you so much, both of you, so much information. So like, I have a lot of questions, of course, but I want to check with Lotta if we have any questions online first. Okay, no questions in the chat. Please feel free to write in the chat if you have any questions. But something that I think about is these stories or this functionality that you are working with. So how can you maintain this as a core feature in the digital twin? Like instead of having it as a temporary one-off thing with this application, is there anything that you can feel that this can go into the digital twin of the city?
Yes, I think that's what's so great about this project. Also, that it really has the ambition to have an like influence on the infrastructure. It's working with the infrastructure of how do we create those digital twins and cityverse experiences. And of course, that is not the responsibility of only like the work package tour. So it's a common responsibility that we have together in this project and together with the other cityverse projects as well, like influencing this infrastructure. And I'm just taking for an example that when we listed the need of having accessible wayfinding within an interior design. So saying, for example, how do we get from the parking lot to our seats inside while we have someone with us using a wheelchair. So we want to have, because it's not provided today, for example, in existing maps or so, how do we get a wheelchair accessible route? And digging into that specific topic, we have understood, and together with the other work packages and the partners in this project, that it's layers of both data layers and decisions about how to do that particular wayfinding functionality. So I think if we can find a way of doing that, for example, it can also have an influence on the whole like overall infrastructure, which is like building this toolbox in a sense with a focus on accessibility. And that is a great potential, and it's something I hope that we can provide from this project.
Yeah. So that's very interesting. And that you mentioned wheelchairs, but another question is the attitudinal barriers. You mentioned that this is a barrier as well. And how can we use a digital tool like this Cityverse to contribute to reducing the more social barriers and increase the public understanding in a wider community?
I think what's great about this and what stands out with this technology is also the possibility of simulations. You can do simulations inside where you can also do simulations of how do you experience or understand an environment when you have a diversity of needs and specific needs, for example. So hopefully, potentially in the future, this can also become a tool of training and getting the access to how could you experience an environment when you have a diversity of different needs. So it could become training for service staff or people working in both at the venue, for example, like we're working with Scandinavian, for example, people working there or planning events there. So it can be event planners. It can also be urban planners, like planning the whole overall city environment, also about like coming from the parking lot, for example, going inside, etc. And when you have that kind of understanding, with understanding comes also lowered barriers, I think, in terms of attitudes, because it's about not only ignorance today, it's also about not having the understanding, basically. So maybe that could be something here that we could use this tool for also.
So knowledge is an important insight from this project as well. Yes. And Emilia, you mentioned the broader public. So how, since you started your research on the families, you're now expanding to have a broader public. Of course, we want to have like solve for one, extend to many. So now you are extending to many. So how is the research about this broader public? What is the plan regarding that?
Yeah, so we're currently working with the city of Gothenburg. So we're in touch with them, and we're actually currently planning and are currently performing different types of research. And so we've gained access to different, we call them arenas, but different locations across the city. So it could be places like libraries or train stations, where we're trying to find places where there's that intersection between lots of different people. And of course, that also means lots of different needs. So we're collaborating with the city, and then of course you at our normal as well have conducted a little bit of research on a wider scale, still a bit more family centric, but we're touching more on things like older adults, maybe people who are newer to Sweden and things like that.
So thank you. Lotta, any questions? No questions from the audience? So if
You're
there
happy
are
to reach
no...
out anytime.
Yeah, of course. So
reach out
just
some
get in
questions.
touch if any question pops up after this, or just contact us if you see this recording afterwards on our website. So then I plan to close this recorded session, and I will close the recording, but we will stay along for a couple of minutes if there are someone of you that wants to talk a little bit more about this universal design and the research and the project. So we will stay here for a couple of more minutes, but now I want to say thank you so much for attending this project level up session, and I also want to remind you again on the 9th of December, since that is the interesting one for the local digital twin toolbox. So
yes, thank you.
So thank you so much.